High Commissioner, welcome and thank you very much for being with us today. Since you took office a year ago, more than a year ago, you visited many field operations. Just last week you were in Syria and Lebanon. Can you tell us your key impressions of all your field visits over the past year and a half?
I am quite proud, may I say this, that in my first year as High Commissioner I was able to visit not only many field locations but also some of the most difficult places in which UNHCR staff serves. I say this because I truly believe that the field, and especially those frontline fields, are where our work as UNHCR is the most important. Of course, everybody's work is important, but there is where it matters most for the people that we serve, for the refugees, for the displaced, for the stateless, for the returnees. And it is extremely important also in the environment in which we live, just like I did in Aleppo last week. It is important to remind a world which is becoming suspicious sometimes of refugees. It is important to remind them that those difficult places, those places at war, sometimes those destroyed places, are the places from which refugees have come, seeking protection, seeking asylum. It's a very important message which we can pass only if we are there, only if we are eyewitnesses of those difficult situations.
Of course. And as you know, the current global environment in the United States, in Europe and elsewhere is generating a lot of that uncertainty that you are referring to. And refugees are at the center of the political debate, and protection is under pressure in many parts of the world. What is your reading, High Commissioner, of this, and what does it mean for our organization, UNHCR, and for the refugees we serve?
I entirely agree and understand that there is a widespread feeling that we have entered. I was going to say we are entering. No, we have entered already a difficult phase, perhaps in the history of humanity, certainly in the history of our organization, in a context which is more hostile than it used to be. Last year was an interesting year. We had the Europe crisis, the arrivals of many refugees, the protection crisis in Europe, the closing down of borders, a new attitude of many European countries vis-à-vis refugees. This had repercussions in many other parts of the world, especially in long-standing asylum countries throughout the world. This year we have seen a similar evolution in the United States, or we are seeing the beginning of it. These, of course, are issues of concern to us. Those are countries and areas in which we have always enjoyed strong alliances, and we must continue to pursue them, but it is more difficult than before. We have also seen positive developments last year. In spite of this context, countries came together in New York in September and unanimously endorsed, signed the New York Declaration, which is a resounding affirmation of international solidarity for refugees. You may say that's a UN document, that doesn't matter. Well, it does. And the choice to sign it and to endorse it was a political choice. And we have a whole follow-up process to that important declaration, which we are focusing on, which is opening up for us also new approaches which are extremely interesting, like the comprehensive refugee response framework, new partnerships and so forth. So there's a lot of positives on which to build, but there is certainly a difficult environment which we need to study, to analyze, and to become able to operate with the same purposes in mind.
And as you speak about the uncertain environment that we live in, and this new phase and the new dynamics that are dominating almost all corners of the world, What is UNHCR doing about it? And what can the UNHCR team, because you have a huge team that you are speaking to now, today, what can this team of staff and consultants and volunteers and contractors, what can they do to address this, these uncertain times?
We must remain professional. We must remain effective in the manner in which we respond to crises, to situations, in which we pursue solutions, in which we suggest ways forward to states that many times react negatively because they do not know how to proceed faced with this new widespread phenomenon of huge human mobility. So we have an important role to keep everybody steady, to give advice that is principled, because it is extremely important that we continue to uphold refugee protection principles, but it is also crucial that we provide advice that is practicable, so that we remain relevant to our interlocutors. We all have emotions, and those emotions are good. But when it comes to responding, to finding solutions, to chart a way forward, we must always think of the best option for the refugees and other people of concern. The politicization of the refugee question is largely founded on negative emotions. I think that we need to respond to that by making ourselves available as an agency that is a custodian of principles, but also the holder of important and practical tools to address, in a principled manner, the challenges that we all face together. I think it's very important that we remain confident of our legal expertise, of our credibility, and of the solidity of our principles. And armed with that, engage with the US administration and indeed with all governments that are engaged in this debate. We need to continue to convey the message to donor governments that their contributions are very important for refugees that find themselves in the situations that we mentioned earlier. We need to convey that message that contributions from rich countries are indispensable to the protection of refugees in those areas, but also to the stability of entire regions and, in fact, to global stability. And at the same time, we have to tell them, give a good example. Provide protection to the refugees that come to your shores or to your borders. Continue to uphold resettlement as a fundamental solution for the most vulnerable refugees. We have to work on all these areas. And I do think that in spite of the big challenges, in spite of an environment that at times may be a bit intimidating because it also uses a new language that we're not accustomed to, in spite of that, we have the experience, we have the knowledge, we have the credibility, and we have an attachment to principles that nobody can dispute and that gives us the authority to be listened to interlocutors of those governments.
And that gives me a very good cue to ask the next question, High Commissioner, because one of the most important tools in this new age is social media. Do you have any guidance to give our colleagues and friends around the world about the use of social media?
I do have guidance, or I do have something to say about this important topic. First of all, I would like to dispel any notion that I am against the use of social media by any of our staff.
I'm sure a lot of people will be happy to hear that.
I would actually encourage people to use social media. I myself have used them for some time. I have learned to tweet in this organization, and I find it a very effective tool to convey messages to a very large public opinion. However, it is very important to remember, as I'm sure everybody knows, that social media are a very exposed way of manifesting opinions. Social media are accessible to all. Whatever we write on Twitter or Facebook or any other of these tools that are available to all of us can be read by anybody, can be used, misused, and abused by anybody. Therefore, my message is, be judicious. Use your judgment in what you write in social media, in what you put forward in social media, especially when dealing with matters that are political in nature. Once again, I'm not at all suggesting that we don't use those media, but we must use them with a great deal of judgment. I suggest, like I have done, that we avoid, for example, facile satire or jokes when it comes to the political domain, and we concentrate on passing constructive messages. We have a lot of important and positive things to say about refugees, about displaced, about the people we care for. We have great human stories to put forward as example of how positive their contribution is to humanity. Let's use that. Let's concentrate on that. Let's insist on the positive rather than highlight the negatives, which can be misused and misconstrued. That's my strong advice. And by the way, there are already in place guidelines on social media, which I'm really inviting everybody to read. This is a time in which we must be prudent and thoughtful.
In conclusion, I ask you if you have any other messages you would like to convey to the UNHCR team all over the world.
The current environment is worrying. But my strongest message here is we have the tools to navigate through this crisis and to continue to remain a credible actor. We must remain courageous because there will be difficult situations in which we, including myself, will be under a lot of pressure. We have enough tools to do that, and the foundation on which the principles and values that inform our work, those foundations are strong, are solid, and are needed by humanity.
High Commissioner, thank you very, very much for being with us today.
Thank you.